The great hall of the Zirathi Empire was vast and cold. The ceiling rose so high that it disappeared into shadows, and the floor shone like black glass. Alien banners floated in the air, glowing with symbols older than most stars. Powerful beings filled the chamber, generals, nobles, warriors, each one dangerous. Each one watching a single human standing alone at the center. His name was Ethan Cole. He did not belong there. Ethan was not a soldier. He was not a diplomat. He was not even important. He was a human mechanic who fixed broken machines on distant space stations. His clothes were plain, his boots worn, his hands marked with old scars from tools and hard work. Yet now, every eye in the Empire was on him. At the far end of the hall sat Queen Zalira, ruler of the Zirathi. Her throne was carved from living crystal, glowing softly with power. Her presence alone made even the strongest warriors lower their heads. She had ruled for hundreds of cycles, led fleets into war, and crushed enemies without mercy. Ethan felt fear tighten his chest, but he did not kneel, not because he was brave, but because he did not know how to be anything else. The silence stretched painfully until Queen Zalira finally spoke. My daughter has made her choice. Her voice was calm, deep, and carried through the hall like thunder. A low murmur spread among the nobles. Choices made by the royal heir were never simple things. They shaped alliances, wars, and the future of the empire. Queen Zalira slowly rose from her throne. Ethan's heart began to pound. He had already been questioned for hours. Why was he near the medical wing? Why had he ignored orders? Why had he touched the royal heir without permission? He had answered honestly. Now, he feared honesty would not be enough. The queen stepped forward and raised one clawed hand. She pointed directly at him. At you, she said. The hall exploded with sound, angry clicks, shocked gasps, outright laughter from some nobles who thought they had misheard. Ethan froze. He turned his head slightly, expecting to see another human behind him. There was no one. Slowly he looked back at the queen. Me? He asked quietly. The queen's glowing eyes never left his face. Yes, she said. You. Ethan felt his legs weaken. Before he could speak, a smaller figure stepped forward from beside the throne. She was young, slender, her skin marked with royal patterns. Her eyes were bright and full of emotion. Princess Zalira. She looked at Ethan, not like a ruler looking at a subject, but like a child looking at someone she trusted. I choose him, she said clearly. Because he stayed. The room fell silent again, but this silence was sharper, more dangerous. Ethan remembered that day too well. The alarms, the poisoned air, the doctors shouting in panic, the princess shaking on the medical bed while the best alien healers failed her. He remembered being told to leave, to stay in his place. And he remembered refusing, because humans did not walk away from dying children. Ethan swallowed hard and finally spoke. I am not worthy of this, he said. His voice shook, but his words were honest. I am just a human. I have no title, no power. I don't even understand your world. Queen Zalira stepped closer. You understand one thing, she said. Loyalty. She looked around the hall. When my daughter lay dying, warriors froze. Doctors hesitated. Rules mattered more than life. Her gaze returned to Ethan. You broke those rules. The queen lowered her voice. You stayed. Ethan felt his eyes burn. I did what anyone should do, he said. Softly. The queen shook her head. No, she replied. You did what humans do. She straightened and spoke words that would echo through the empire for generations. My daughter chooses you, the queen declared, and I will not deny her. Ethan knew then that his life had ended, and something far greater, far more dangerous had begun. Because when a queen speaks those words, there is no turning back. And Ethan Cole, a simple human mechanic, could not say no. After the Queen's words, the palace never felt the same. Ethan walked through long crystal corridors with armed guards on every side. Their weapons were not pointed at him, but they were not lowered either. To the Zirathi, a human so close to the royal family was not protection, it was a risk. Ethan felt it in every stare, fear, anger, disgust. He kept his eyes forward. He had been given a title he did not want, Bond Guardian, and a responsibility heavier than any machine he had ever repaired. Princess Salira walked beside him. She was quiet now, her steps light, her long cloak brushing the floor. Sometimes she looked up at Ethan, as if checking whether he was still there. He always was. They reached a private garden under a transparent dome. Artificial sunlight warmed the air, and alien flowers slowly opened as they sensed movement. The guards stopped at the entrance for the first time since the throne hall. Ethan and the princess were alone. Salira broke the silence. "Are you angry?" she asked. Ethan blinked in surprise. "At you? Never." She lowered her eyes. "Everyone says you were forced, that you will leave when you can." Ethan crouched so he was closer to her level. "I stayed once," he said gently. "I don't run from promises." Her eyes shone, and for a moment she looked very young. That night, Ethan could not sleep. His room was large, soft, and guarded. Still, he lay awake, replaying memories he wished he could forget. The medical wing. The alarms, the smell of burning chemicals. He had only been fixing a water recycler when the station went into lockdown. Poison gas designed for Zirathi biology had leaked into the royal chamber. Guards sealed the area. Too late. Ethan had heard the screams. Everyone else waited for orders. He ran. The doctors pushed him away, shouting words he did not understand. The princess was convulsing, her breathing shallow, her skin fading in color. Zirathi medicine failed. Ethan had no cure, only instincts. He remembered human emergency training, old survival manuals. The way poisons always needed one thing: removal. He tore apart a portable filter, burned his hands rewiring it, and forced airflow through her lungs. He used crude detox methods meant for humans and prayed they worked on aliens for hours. He stayed. When her breathing finally slowed, Ethan collapsed beside her bed. He woke to Salira's small hand gripping his finger. Back in the present. Ethan felt a soft tug on his sleeve. She stood beside him again, eyes wide. "You left once," she said quietly. Ethan frowned. "When?" "In your sleep," she answered. "You were crying." Ethan closed his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She shook her head. "You came back." That was when Ethan understood something important. She wasn't afraid of losing her throne. She was afraid of losing him. The next days were not kind. Nobles challenged Ethan openly. Warriors tested him, pushing past him, watching to see if he would break. Priests whispered that a human bond was an insult to the stars. Ethan endured it all, because every time he wanted to walk away, he remembered a small hand holding his finger, refusing to let go. One evening, as the artificial sun set, Salira asked a question that cut deeper than any insult. "Will you die for me?" Ethan did not answer quickly. He knelt, met her eyes, and spoke with quiet certainty. "I already almost did," he said. "So yes." She stepped forward and hugged him. And in that moment, surrounded by enemies and doubt, Ethan realized something terrifying and beautiful. This was no longer a duty. This was family. And humans did not abandon family. The palace. Whispers grew louder. Ethan had thought the hardest part was saving the princes. He had been wrong. The hardest part was living in a world where every step he took was questioned, where every glance could hide a blade. The nobles' eyes followed him with suspicion. The generals muttered among themselves, shaking their long clawed heads. Priests called him an abomination, a weak human interfering in the destiny of the galaxy's greatest empire. Ethan felt the weight of it. He was nothing but a simple human, alone in a palace of centuries-old traditions and towering power. The Zirathi did not forgive easily. They respected strength and fear, not loyalty and courage. And yet, the princess had chosen him. That choice made him a target. That choice made him dangerous. He walked through the corridors, head low, ignoring the scowls and whispers. Guards followed at a distance, some curious, some suspicious. He knew the queen had granted him authority, but authority meant little when enemies hid in every shadow. Ethan focused on what mattered. Celira, the princess, was learning quickly. She studied strategy, diplomacy, and combat with a determination that amazed even the best teachers. And every lesson, every stumble, she wanted him beside her, not as a protector of status, but as a protector of life. The first test came quietly. A noble challenged him during a ceremonial feast, accusing him of bringing shame to the royal line. His words were sharp, full of venom. The crowd watched, expecting Ethan to bow or apologize. But Ethan did neither. "I have done nothing but protect her," he said. "I answer to no one but her and her mother." The hall fell silent, a tense quiet. Some whispered in disbelief. Others quietly admired him. Humans were strange, unpredictable, defiant. The second test came with claws and teeth. During a training session, the palace warriors pushed him harder than anyone else. They laughed at his slower reflexes, stronger builds, and fragile body. Ethan was thrown to the ground more times than he could count. Every fall left bruises, cuts, and aching bones. Every fall tested his endurance, but he rose each time. Humans were stubborn. Humans did not break. Celira watched from the sidelines. Tears often filled her eyes when he took a hit, but she never turned away. And that motivated him more than any command or pride. That one night, the final test arrived without warning. Assassins infiltrated the palace, shadows moving faster than the eyes could see. They were trained to kill the princess before dawn. The alarms screamed, and guards rushed to defend the halls. But Ethan moved first. He intercepted a blade meant for Celira. Pain exploded in his side, but he did not fall. He shielded her, shouting for her to run. She refused. Together, they fought through the corridors, corner after corner, shadow after shadow. Each strike he deflected was a promise kept. Each hit he absorbed was proof that humans, though smaller and weaker in form, carried strength of heart and courage that could bend even the galaxy's greatest warriors to admiration. By sunrise, the assassins were gone. The palace was shaken, but unbroken. Celira held his bleeding hand, her small fingers pressing against his palm. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you stay?" Ethan looked at her, pain and exhaustion carved into his face, and smiled faintly. "Because someone once stayed for me," he said. "Because I know what it means to be saved." The queen watched silently from above, her eyes unreadable. She had seen humans before, had studied them from a distance. But she had never seen one like Ethan, one that could endure scorn, hatred, and pain, not for power, not for glory, but for loyalty, for love. The whispers began to change. Some nobles still hated him, yes, but others nodded in respect. Guards stayed closer, not to spy, but to learn. Warriors lowered their weapons slightly, acknowledging the strange, indestructible spirit of a human who refused to break. Ethan's presence had begun to change the palace, not through threats, not through fear, not through status, not through something far rarer, through courage, through love, through the unshakable determination to never leave someone who relied on him, even in a galaxy that despised weakness. Ethan was becoming unstoppable, and he would never let go of the girl who had chosen him. The sky above Zirathi space burned with fire. Ethan had never seen anything like it. Enemy ships, sleek and black as shadows, tore through the outer defenses. Explosions lit the void like artificial suns. Alarms screamed through the palace and the surrounding fleet. The Empire, for all its strength, trembled under a threat it had never faced before. Queen Zalira gave orders. Her voice, sharp and commanding, echoed through every ship and station. The fleet responded with precision, yet even their best warriors could not hold back the relentless attackers. Zirathi pride was cracking. Fear had crept into the hearts of the strongest, but Ethan did not feel fear. He looked at the princess beside him. Salira's hands were trembling, her eyes wide, but she stood straight, refusing to retreat. She had learned from him. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was moving forward in spite of it. "The palace is compromised," the chief general shouted. "We must evacuate her." Ethan shook his head. "If she runs, the enemy wins. If we stay, maybe we can survive. And maybe they will see humans are not just weak creatures." The queen's advisors panicked. "A human cannot command the defense. You will be destroyed." Ethan ignored them. There was no time to argue. He ran to the defense station overlooking the fleet. His hands moved quickly, adjusting shields, rerouting energy flows, improvising tactics that no Zirathi would have considered. Human logic was strange, unpredictable, but it worked. Debris from destroyed ships became traps. Weak points were exploited. Retreating enemies were lured into ambushes. Ethan's mind raced, faster than any weapon system, faster than the fear surrounding him. For 12 hours the battle raged. Ethan never stopped. Sweat burned his eyes. Cuts streaked his skin. His lungs ached, but he could not give up. Not now. Not when the princess's life and the future of the Empire hung in the balance. Finally, at dawn, silence fell. The enemy retreated, leaving broken ships floating in the void. The Zirathi fleet was battered but alive. And the palace, the heart of the Empire, still stood. Ethan collapsed against the wall of the command station, every muscle trembling. Blood and grime streaked his face, but a quiet satisfaction burned in his chest. He had done the impossible. Not through brute force, not through strength of arms, but through strategy, endurance, and refusal to quit. Zalira ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. You saved us." She gasped. Ethan lifted a hand, wiping the sweat and ash from her cheek. "We saved each other," he said softly. "You trusted me. That's why I could do it." The queen arrived shortly after, silent as always, her eyes scanning the scene. She knelt beside him, an unheard-of gesture of respect for a human. Her voice was calm, but full of approval. "You have done what no Zirathi could," she said. "You have defended my daughter and my empire." Ethan looked at her, exhausted but proud. "I'm just a human," he whispered. "I did what anyone would do." "You are more than that," the queen replied. "You are a symbol. Proof that courage does not belong to a species, but to the soul." From that day forward, Ethan's reputation began to shift. Whispers of fear and disgust slowly changed into murmurs of respect. Some nobles still doubted him, still called him weak, but others watched, learning. The human who had faced death without surrender, who had defied expectations, had survived where others would have fallen. Zalira stayed by his side the entire time, refusing to leave him for even a second. Ethan realized then what he had always known deep down. He was not just protecting her because of duty. He was protecting her because she had become his anchor, his reason to endure. His family, the galaxy had fallen silent that day, not just from the shock of war, but from a quiet, undeniable truth. Humans were dangerous in ways that no one had anticipated. Not because of weapons, or size, or strength, but because of spirit. Ethan stared at the stars above, blackened by smoke and destruction. He thought of Earth, of quiet streets and simple machines. And then he looked at the princess, alive and determined, and felt a strange warmth in his chest. This was not the end of war. It was only the beginning. But for the first time, he felt certain of one thing: no enemy, no empire, and no force in the galaxy could break the bond between a human and the girl who had chosen him. The aftermath of the battle left the palace tense and fragile. The halls were quiet now, but the whispers had not ended. Nobles and generals lingered in shadows, watching Ethan as though he were a foreign disease in the heart of their empire. Some admired him secretly. Others plotted quietly. Queen Zelira summoned her advisors to the high chamber. Her throne, still glowing faintly from the battle's chaos, cast long shadows across the polished floor. The council murmured nervously, each voice trembling with concern and fear. "He cannot be allowed to remain," one general said, his voice sharp. "A human holds no place at court. His influence over the princess, it undermines centuries of tradition." "You would risk our future for one human?" asked another, her claws tapping sharply against the floor. "He is strong, perhaps, but he is not Zirathi. He cannot be trusted." The queen listened silently, her hands folded over the glowing crystal of her throne. She did not speak immediately. She watched a small figure standing nearby, her daughter Zelira. The girl's eyes were wide, but unafraid. For the first time, the queen realized that strength could take many forms. "My daughter trusts him," Zelira said softly, finally breaking the silence. Her voice, though quiet, carried the weight of command. "She has seen what I have not, courage beyond the limits of our understanding. And she has chosen him." The council erupted in protest. Voices shouted over one another, demanding the human be removed, executed, or exiled. Some even suggested the princess's loyalty was misplaced and dangerous. The queen raised a hand, silencing them all. Her eyes burned with authority and quiet fury. "Enough," she said. "He has saved her life. He has saved this palace. And he will remain. That is my decree." Ethan, standing a few steps behind Zelira, felt the weight of those words settle on him like stone. He was not a soldier. He was not a noble. He was not a ruler. Yet the queen had given him a choice he could not refuse. A place he could never earn through rank or blood, only through loyalty, courage, and the bond he shared with her daughter. Zelira stepped forward, her hand brushing Ethan's. "They will never accept you," she said quietly. "But I will." Ethan looked at her, pain and exhaustion in his eyes. "I don't need their acceptance," he said softly. "Just yours." The queen studied them both. Her gaze softened as she saw the quiet trust, the unspoken understanding, the human who had become her daughter's anchor. In that moment, Zelira realized the truth of something she had feared her entire reign. Sometimes tradition must bend, or it will break entirely. "You already belong," the queen said finally. "Not by blood, not by rank, but by the bond that cannot be taken from you." Ethan bowed his head. The words felt heavier than any medal or title he had ever received. A human in a Zirithi palace, recognized not for strength, not for conquest, but for loyalty. The irony was not lost on him. The council grumbled but dared not oppose her further. The queen had spoken, and even centuries of tradition bowed to her will. Later, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Zelira stood beside Ethan under the artificial sunlight. She touched his arm gently. "You stayed for me," she said. "Even when it hurt. Even when no one else did." Ethan smiled, though tiredness weighed him down. "Because you mattered," he said simply. "Because someone once stayed for me too. I couldn't walk away, not when it counted." The princess nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and awe. For the first time, she truly understood what human courage meant. It was not about power or weapons or speed. It was about staying, enduring, protecting, even when the world expected you to fail. And in that moment, surrounded by the palace that had once rejected him, Ethan understood something important. He was no longer just a human mechanic. He was a protector, a teacher, a friend, and a part of the girl's life he had vowed to guard. The Queen's decree had given him duty, but his heart had given him purpose. For the first time in centuries, the Zirathi Empire had a human standing at its side, not as a subject, not as a servant, but as something far greater, and the galaxy, though it would not understand yet, had begun to see the shape of a different kind of power, one born of loyalty, courage, and the bond between a human and a princess who refused to let go. Ethan looked up at the stars, shining through the transparent dome of the garden. The battles were not over, the enemies were not gone, and the whispers of doubt would continue, but he knew this truth. Stronger than any fear, where humans choose, they stay, and when they stay, no one is ever truly alone. Years passed, and the palace changed. Slowly, quietly, like the tide reshaping a shore. The whispers of doubt about Ethan did not disappear, but they softened. Some nobles still looked at him with suspicion, still muttered that a human had no place beside the royal family. But others began to watch, to learn, to respect the quiet courage of a man who had no sword stronger than his hands, no fleet faster than his mind, and yet had defended the empire when all else seemed lost. Princess Celira grew taller. Her shoulders straightened. Her hair, once soft and short, now flowed long and strong, a crown of her own making. But even as she trained with the fiercest warriors, she never left Ethan behind. He was always near, not because she needed him to protect her, but because she wanted him there. Because he had once saved her life, and she had learned from him what it meant to endure, to stand, to care for something greater than oneself. Ethan did not seek recognition. He did not seek power. He did what humans always did. He stayed. He taught the princess patience, humility, and the strange strength that came not from muscle, but from heart. When the Zirathi grew impatient with her lessons, frustrated with her small mistakes, Ethan reminded her to breathe, to think, to never fear failure. Strength is not winning every fight, he told her one evening, leaning on a rail and staring at the glowing stars. Strength is staying when it hurts, when no one expects you to. Strength is holding on to what matters most. The princess listened. She learned. She grew. And the empire watched, curious and wary. Slowly, the impossible became undeniable. Humans were not the fragile species many had thought. Their courage, their loyalty, their stubbornness. It changed the rules. It reshaped the understanding of strength. One day, Celira was called to lead a council session, her first alone, while the Queen attended interstellar negotiations. She entered the chamber, head held high, and found generals and nobles arguing bitterly over defense plans. They expected hesitation, weakness, fear. Instead, she spoke clearly, decisively, her words shaped by Ethan's lessons. She proposed strategies that combined human ingenuity with Zirathi power. The room fell silent. Even the most rigid generals nodded. They had learned from observation. Human thinking could be sharper than any blade. After the council, Celira sought Ethan. She found him in the palace gardens, tending to the artificial flowers that no one else cared for. He looked up and smiled, wiping his hands. "You were right," she said softly. "Strength is not what I thought it was. It's staying. It's being brave even when it's easier to run. And it's helping others when no one expects it." Ethan shook his head, eyes crinkling with a tired smile. "You've learned more than I could ever teach," he said. "You've learned because you chose to stay too. Humans may show the way, but you, princess, have made it your own." The bond between them grew, deeper than any title, stronger than any law. Through years of practice, danger, and quiet moments of understanding, the princess began to embody the lessons he had taught: courage, compassion, endurance. And slowly, the Empire began to follow her lead. Policies changed. The warriors trained differently. The scientists tried human methods. And though the galaxy still whispered, the truth spread like fire in the dark. Humans were dangerous not because they were powerful, but because they were unyielding. Ethan watched her one evening as she stood on a balcony, looking at the stars, her cloak billowing. The city lights reflected in her eyes, but it was the courage in her heart that shone brightest. He felt pride, a deep, quiet warmth that had nothing to do with accolades or titles. This was different. This was lasting. The Queen noticed it too. She watched from the throne room as her daughter grew into a leader the galaxy had not expected. The human at her side had changed everything. Not through conquest or wealth, but through loyalty and example. The Queen, who had once feared allowing a human so close, now understood the true value of Ethan's presence. He had shown them all something they could not take for granted. Strength is not measured in fleets or claws or shields. Strength is measured in the heart. Strength is measured in staying, in protecting, in refusing to abandon those who matter. And in that truth, Ethan had quietly reshaped an empire. Even the stars seemed to shine differently over Zirathi space, as if they had learned a lesson too. A human's courage could outlast armies, outlast fear, and outlast time itself. And in the palace gardens, as Ethan looked at Celira, laughing softly with the student she had just taught, he knew he had done the one thing humans were meant to do. He had stayed, and because he stayed, the galaxy would never forget what human strength really meant. Time passed. The years left their marks on the palace, on the empire, and on Ethan. His hair was streaked with gray, his hands stiff from decades of work and battle, his face lined with fatigue. Yet his eyes still held the same quiet determination, the same steady courage that had first drawn Princess Celira's trust. Humans age differently than Zirathi. They did not live as long, but they left a depth of presence that lasted far longer than a lifetime. Celira had grown into a queen beyond anyone's expectations. She ruled with wisdom, courage, and compassion, guided always by the lessons Ethan had taught her, that strength is staying, that loyalty is courage, that love is a force the galaxy cannot measure. Her advisors respected her. Her generals followed her. And the empire, once rigid and unyielding, began to bend in ways that reflected the spirit of the human at her side. Yet even as the empire thrived, Ethan's body began to fail him. A small cough became a long one. A minor pain became a sharp ache. Every day, he felt the weight of mortality pressing heavier. Still, he did not stop. Still, he stayed beside Celira, offering counsel, comfort, and quiet reassurance. He had promised once to protect her, and a promise made by a human was not broken lightly. One evening, the stars shone bright above the palace gardens. The city lights reflected in Celira's eyes, but she hardly noticed them. She was focused on Ethan, who sat on a stone bench, hands folded in his lap, shoulders slightly hunched with age. The wind stirred the leaves around them, carrying a calm, peaceful energy. "You've done more than I could have imagined," Celira said softly, her voice full of gratitude and quiet awe. "You've taught me what it means to be strong, and more importantly, to be human." Ethan smiled, though his lips trembled with weakness. "You were always strong," he said. "I only helped you see it for yourself. Humans, we just stay. That's all. We don't run. We don't give up, we just stay." Celira's hand reached for his. She gripped it gently, holding it like a lifeline. "And I will stay with you," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Always, you saved me, and I will never forget that." Ethan's eyes softened. He knew his time was near. His body was telling him what he already felt in his bones. But there was no fear in him, only a quiet satisfaction. He had done what humans always did. He had stayed when it mattered, and because of that, Someone he loved had lived and thrived. Then I am ready, he whispered. Salira's grip tightened, but she understood. Humans, she realized, could give everything without expectation. They could leave behind a presence so powerful, so unshakable, that it shaped the lives of those who remained. Ethan closed his eyes, breathing in the cool night air one last time. The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter, as if acknowledging the end of a life that had changed a galaxy, not through conquest, not through fear, but through courage, loyalty, and love. The palace guards, the nobles, even the queen watched from a distance. They understood what had happened without words. A human had left his mark, not on walls or thrones, but on the hearts of the empire itself. When he exhaled for the last time, Salira pressed her forehead to his hand. You will live in every choice I make, she whispered. In every life I protect. In every battle I fight. You will never truly be gone. The queen stepped forward, her voice quiet but filled with reverence. My daughter chose you, Salira said, her words echoing across the silent gardens. And I have never regretted it. Humanity has taught us a lesson we will,